I watched the movie at Venice, and I love the movie. I
Thank
have a
you.
question. Do you have a personal interest in architecture that influence your approach to this film? And how did your understanding of architectural principle inform your directorial choices?
You know, I think that yes. Okay, the short answer is yes. I have a connection to architecture. I grew up with I have a single mother and I was an only child.
Yeah.
And my uncle, my mother's brother, lived with us while he was attending Taliesin West, Frank Lloyd Wright School in Arizona. So I grew up at and around Taliesin. Um, that's the short, short response for that. And in regards to, for me, architecture and cinema are intrinsically linked for a variety of reasons. Partially because they are art forms that require the collaboration of hundreds of individuals to make
Mhm.
them possible. There's also an inherent push and pull between the client and the architect, the same way that there is between the studio and the filmmaker, or the financier and the filmmaker. So the film is exploring all of these things, but for me, architecture and cinema are intrinsically linked beyond the process. I think when I think about the structure of a movie, for me, I am thinking about guiding people through a space. Frank Lloyd Wright, for example, when you would enter one of his buildings, one of his residences in particular, you would always enter a sort of antechamber with no windows, quite claustrophobic, very low ceilings. And it was a place for you to take off your shoes, hang up your coat, and then you would go up a short set of stairs that would kind of force your perspective. And then when you would get to the top of those stairs, like boom, it would crack wide open. So if you think about that as it relates to a shot like the opening shot on the
Mhm.
boat with Adrian, it is a very architectural shot in terms of how it plays with, the absence of light, and then suddenly when it cracks wide open to something more panoramic with the Statue of Liberty. So yes, I think architecture is always on my mind when I'm making a movie.
Yeah, but the choice of brutalist architecture is very interesting. I'm just curious, how does the brutalist architecture style serve as a narrative device in this film? In what ways does it reflect the protagonist's personal and professional evolution?
Well, listen, brutalism came about in the 1950s. The first seeds of it were at the Bauhaus in the 20s and 30s. It is a style of architecture that was predominantly practiced by Central and Eastern European Jews that attended the Bauhaus. And so for me, of course, these buildings are an extraordinary visual allegory for post-war trauma and how post-war architecture and post-war trauma for me were intrinsically linked. I also think that, the big thing for me in terms of the visual allegory of these buildings is that communities tend to treat immigrants the same way that they treat, buildings that are erected that are unfamiliar stylistically. They want them torn down. And so for me, it was a perfect and very direct visual metaphor